What's up, YouTube? It's back. It's back. Anyway, okay, so we're going to be doing a revisit of comparison between the K3 Mark 1 and the K3 Mark 3. Now, this is not going to be, an image sharpness comparison. Still having some weird anomalies in regards to the DA50 1.8 on the K3 Mark 3. Sometimes it's razor sharp, and then I take the same shot again, and it's not as sharp. So I'm still trying to nail that. This is going to be a look at the overall image quality. Not necessarily the sharpness, but the dynamic range, color rendition retention, and just to give you an idea as to what I'm talking about here, basically what I did was I shot in mixed lighting using multi-auto white balance on both the K3 Mark 1 and the K3 Mark 3. I had a larger LED panel shining on the scene. I had another smaller LED light that has individual LEDs. I took the diffuser panel off. I had that firing back towards the camera. And then my overhead my overhead pot lighting is more on the tungsten side of the color spectrum. So it is mixed lighting. It's a good torture test. Let's just take a look in DxO. I've turned the corrections and all that stuff off, and we're going to see what we can pull out of the images, what we can recover, and how well does it retain color as the ISOs climb up. And people mentioned in my last video, instead of looking at just the metering, I should have kept the settings identical on both cameras, so that's what I did this time. I shot at 1/500th of a second, f4, and all I did was change the ISO. I was shot in manual mode, all corrections off, ISO 100, 200, 400, 800, 16, 32, all the way up to 51,200. So let's just get right to it and see how it goes. There we go. Okay, that's better. All right, so this is the K3 Mark 1, the images from the K3 Mark 1. Now, this was 5 stops underexposed. Let's see here. Where is the shot information? I'll just bring this here. Okay, so the shot information, 1/500th of a second, ISO 100. F4. So, with that said, let's just get right into this here and see what happens if we bring the exposure down so that we can see the individual pixels on this area here. Because, like I said, I took the diffuser panel off, and let's bring the exposure down. Nope, still nothing. Completely and utterly blown out. So, let's see what happens with the K3 Mark 3. And we'll do the same thing here. Again, ISO 100. And I've labeled each one of these with the ISO that was shot. So here's the K3 Mark 3. And let's bring this down. Whoa. What was that? Look at that. That's crazy. Let's bring this down to, say, 3. Let's see here, 3. Oh yeah, look at that, 3.52. Let's just do 3.5 stops. Let's bring this one back to 3.5 stops, minus 3.5. You can see some of the individual lights, but the center is, it's blown out. There's nothing. K3 Mark 3, you can actually see the individual LEDs. Wow, that's impressive. Usually recovering highlights that's the tough gig to try to pull off. So, wow, that's actually very surprising. So let's raise shadows here. Let's just get the image back to the full scene. Okay, let's see if we can bring. Oh yeah, that looks beautiful. Alright, let's see if we do just +3. That's going to be, yeah, that's way too much. Way too much shadow. Way too much shadow. So let's muck around with it here. So that was 3. And then we'll bring the shadows up and see if it does that same water painting, which it probably will. Yeah, a little bit. It's not nearly as bad, though. I had get that down at 50. Yeah. All right. So obviously that doesn't work, but the ability to recover the highlights, I mean, that was just, that was intense. So let's raise the exposure, 3.2, and then bring the highlights back down. So that's not going to work. And I don't think we'll be able to recover that off of the K3 Mark III either. No. So just in regards to the exposure, yes, you can. You can totally actually do that. But there's just not enough color information. Like I said, it was 5 stops underexposed. But being able to recover the highlights to this extent is very, very impressive. Okay, so let's see, that was 3.24. All right. So let's go to ISO 200 on the K3 Mark I. And again, let's bring this down. No, it's too far gone. Let's see if we can recover the highlights on the K3 Mark III. And no, it's too far gone. Too far gone. Oh well. Yeah, too far gone. So at ISO 100, there is more than enough dynamic range to be able to recover some crazy amount of highlights. Now, in regards to being able to recover the entire scene, let's do that quickly here. So let's raise. So this was underexposed by 4 stops. So let's bring this back to 4. And we'll bring the K3 Mark III back up to 4 stops as well. Okay, so looking at this, looking at the histogram actually, if you compare the 2 different histograms, so here's the K3 Mark I, you'll notice it is on the warmer side if you look at where the reds are actually showing up. And looking at the color difference in the rendition, the K3 Mark III is actually showing much more tungsten shaded coloring than the K3. Sorry, the K3 Mark I is showing more tungsten color rendering than the K3 Mark III. Again, they were both shot identically with multi-auto white balance. So let's go to ISO 400, and this was, I believe, 3 stops underexposed. So let's bring it back 3 stops up. And we'll do the same for the K3 Mark III here at 400 ISO. And that is 3 stops up. I believe 3, 2, yeah, okay. And this is 400 ISO, yeah. So again, much better color rendition in regards to the K3 Mark III versus the K3 Mark I. Especially the reds. And so let's look at the reds here on the K3 Mark III. It's subtle. It is subtle. However, if you're looking at the table itself, because that's sort of leaning on that tungsten hue, it is much more pronounced on the K3 Mark I versus the K3 Mark III. And same with the white Godox box as well. You can actually see the tungsten, a bit of the tungsten glow. You know, it just has that warmer tone to it, right? Let's go to 800 ISO. And this, I believe, was 2 stops underexposed. And let's go to the K3 Mark III at 800 ISO and raise that one by 2 stops. Sorry about my mechanical clickety-clackety keyboard. So here it is pretty much even. It's actually not a bad showing between the 2 cameras. Actually very, very close. The K3 Mark I does seem to be just a tad bit warmer just slightly, just a slight bit warmer. Yeah, but it is pretty close. This does seem to render a bit on the cooler side. I think this is doing a better job of balancing out the multiple lighting that I had. Now let's go to 1600 ISO, which was one stop underexposed. And let's go here to the K3 Mark III, and that was one stop. So again, it's pretty close. It is pretty close. Again, a tad bit on the warm side, ever so slightly on the K3 Mark I. However, it is a lot closer now than it was in the earlier lower ISO shots. So now, this was a dead even exposure at 3200 ISO. And doesn't look too bad. Not too bad at all. However, the K3 Mark III actually does seem, again, to just retain the actual color rendition just a tad bit better in regards to actual white balance, instead of leaning on the tungsten hues. So there's the K3 Mark III again. No, just a tad. It's very, very slight. It's pretty even at this point. And then 6400 is one stop overexposed. So let's bring this one down. And the K3 Mark III at 64, bring that down. $30.64. There we go. So just to see, okay, let's just make sure here. Histogram should be okay. So this is picking up reds along the mid area. K3 Mark III, the reds should be a bit over to the shadow area, ever so slightly. So there is a slight difference between the two cameras in regards to how they're rendering the colors. However, it is pretty. The K3 Mark III does seem to retain more of a natural tone, especially in mixed lighting, compared to the K3 Mark I. Okay, let's go to 12,800 ISO, and that should be two stops. And the K3 Mark III -2. Okay, so the K3 Mark I. Again, not too bad. Not too bad. 12,800 ISO. It's not the cleanest image. You can see a bit of grain along here, along the box here. The K3 Mark III. Let's just keep an eye out on. Okay, yeah, it is a much cleaner image. Much cleaner image, especially the shadows just above the box here. You can actually see along here there is a fair amount of splotching, and compared to the K3 Mark III, and you actually are starting to get that purple luminance noise tone here. So the K3 Mark III is actually retaining more of a natural image tone as the ISOs continuously increase, which, you know, it is what was promised when this camera was announced. And that was two stops. Let's go to 25,600, and this is -3, and this is -3 as well. And this is where things actually do start to fall apart a bit. Yeah. So you can already see here on the Godox box, it's, yeah, not the greatest looking thing. The K3 Mark I actually, I think, does a better job. There is a bit of splotching along here just from dropping the exposure down. If I raise the exposure by even, say, give or take one stop, that that goes away. Now, this is actually a bit better. It's a bit, there's still a bit of splotching along this edge here. Now with the K3 Mark III, let's bring this up a bit. Yeah, so there is still some of that splotching all along here. If we bring it back up to even, it's pretty much gone. And let's just do the same here. So at a shot where it was actually exposed, you can see the amount of noise. And the K3 Mark III, it is more controlled. The noise is more controlled. It's a finer grain than the K3 Mark I. However, you know, this isn't the... you can't expect miracles. I mean, you can ask for miracles. But again, so this was, I believe it was 2 stops underexposed. And didn't take my negative there. So let's bring that back. Okay, so looking at an actual proper exposure. And let's just get the full scene here. So here you can really see it. All along here is, you know, that purple noise luminance hue. On the K3 Mark III, huge color rendition difference. This looks natural. And the final one is the 51,200, which was, actually I think that should have been 5 stops, but we'll just go 4, because I think that's as far as I can go. Yeah, so this doesn't look very good. I'll straight up does not look very good. So let's change this to 3 and see if that actually brings it up. Okay, there we go. So 3 stops. That makes more sense compared to what I was doing. So let's bring that up 3. Okay, so now things have really started to fall apart. You know, this Godox orange is gone. This orange is gone. You can barely see orange here. I mean, there's luminance noise everywhere here. You know, just everything is splotchy. You can't even read, you know, the LED display here. And let's go to the K3 Mark III. So you can see a bit more detail on the display here. And the actual scene renders a little bit better. It does not have any of that blue tinted luminance noise whatsoever compared to the K3 Mark I. So again, the K3 Mark III, it is doing what it can to actually keep everything pretty even, in a matter of speaking. It has lost a bit of the orange tones and some of the reds here. This red is still being rendered pretty well. All right, there's no issue with that. However, you know, there's only so far you can actually go. And realistically, you could use this if you wanted to convert it to black and white to get rid of the colors. Because, I mean, there is more detail in regards to this image here. Actually, let's see if we can actually bring any more detail into this. Oh, yeah, a little bit. Tad, just very, very, very small amount. Tiny, tiny bit. Let's see if we can bring that with the K3 Mark I. See if there's any additional detail we can get. No. No, you can't. So it is a pretty big difference. And that's pretty much all there is to it. That's it. If you like the video, leave a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Helps me out. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. If you'd like to support the channel, I'll leave that information at the bottom of the description. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go. You will see me on my next video. I'm out.